Okay, another of Mrs. H's top tips for applying your knowledge to the exam questions. This one is on synaptic transmission, and synaptic transmission seems to be quite a common question. Okay, but this one is an application one, so it's applying your knowledge, right? And we see more and more of those application questions now, rather than just rote regurgitation of fact. Okay, so this question says, Raoul has recently been prescribed a drug for mental illness. He looks on the internet to find out more about the drug, but he doesn't understand the phrase synaptic transmission. So write a brief explanation of synaptic transmission in the brain to help him understand his drug, how his drug might work. Okay, so the key thing to pick up on, you know, like all of these questions, you need to respond to the specific question. So therefore, in order to access all your marks, you must refer to Raoul in order to access those top marks. Okay, so here we go. With synaptic transmission, what I've noticed is quite a lot of students talking about the whole process of the movement down the axon. In other words, basically the whole process along the axon, myelin sheath, Schwann cells, etc., etc. You don't need that for this particular question. So anything on synaptic transmission, what you need is this area. So you're explaining what happens in just this area. Okay, so only the activity pre and post synaptic gap. So what do you need? Right, you need to mention the neurotransmitters. You could give an example, and dopamine, serotonin, whatever. Okay, neurotransmitters that are held in these vesicles. All right, and what you need to say is that they are, when the electrical impulse reaches the end bulb, the membrane from the vesicle fuses with this membrane, releasing the neurotransmitters into the synaptic gap or the synapse. They diffuse across, and what you then need to make sure you mention is that they are picked up by specific receptors. Yes, you can mention that they are like a lock and key, that they are very specific to the shape of that neurotransmitter, and therefore the activity continues. And some of these you could add in, some of these are excitatory or have an excitatory impulse, some of them have an inhibitory. But the key thing for the synaptic transmission is making sure you're talking about these vesicles containing the neurotransmitters that then are released into the synaptic gap. They diffuse across. So this is a chemical transmission, this is a chemical transmission, this is electrical, this is chemical, just diffusion across here, and they're picked up by these specific receptors, the neurotransmitters receptors. Okay, so we've got this. We could talk about the axon terminal, we could talk about the synaptic gap, synaptic cleft, and on to the next dendrite. But this is key. Right, so therefore we also need to refer to Raoul. So in reference to Raoul, probably saying that some of it depends on his particular drug that he's been given, but that some of those drugs will increase the likelihood that the neuron will continue to fire, and some of them will decrease the likelihood, some will inhibit, and that's what his drugs are for. So some reference like that for that third mark. And here's the mark scheme under here. This was the particular mark scheme for this sample paper. So you can pause the video and just have a quick look. But basically, it's just getting you to target those points that I have gone over. In terms of this summer 2018, the exam question asked why an impulse flows only one way. And I'll do a separate one on that sort of answer. But basically, we're looking at, you know, the impulse always flows away from the nerve, the cell body. So we could have that. We also should make reference to the fact that they flow across and in one direction. And, you know, there'll be other things that I can include with that. So look out for that separate answer.